Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Elena Pastore, coming out of Florida. And she's going to talk to us all about people development strategist. She's for those interested in leadership, career development, coaching. Elena brings a blend of strength and skill management with career development expertise to help her clients. So, Elena, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Briefly talk about, who you are, how you got there, and how the audience can benefit from your expertise.
Yeah, so I am a leadership and career coach, and I also say people development strategist because it really just applies to everything related to professional development. We all have goals, right? We all want to be and feel successful, and that looks very different for everybody. Whether you are on a specific career path that you already love and see a lot of growth in, or you are looking to change and do something different. I've always had a passion for helping people, which is very broad, and you hear that a lot. And I wasn't really sure how that would specifically play out in a career. And after lots of digging and soul searching, I found coaching. And that was how I got into the space. And I feel that, we spend so many hours of our lives working, 90,000 hours. If you live a long life, you will spend working for the average person. And so, um, it's such a big part of our lives, numerically speaking, in numbers. And if I can help people to love their career, then I can help them to love their life and be happy. And so I work with individuals one on one and work with companies to really get, the whole 360 experience and just help everybody be better.
Yeah. And I love to start out with when I talk to coaches, I always love because a lot of them are into personal development, and I always love to
Mm-hmm.
ask them about mindset. So how can
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of the audience, they're so used to just working, going in, clocking in, you know, punching, all this. But what mindset shifts can help impact one's career growth and leadership abilities for the better?
Yeah, it's a loaded question because there are so many things that I could say to that. Um, it starts with self-awareness, and that's a term that most people I think are pretty familiar with nowadays. And that could mean in itself a million different things to a million different people. I guess the first place that I would go is, are you choosing what you're choosing because of, or are you choosing what you're choosing from a place of possibility or a place of necessity? So even when you think about people that are doctors, lawyers, engineers that have that's a very specific career path. You learn a very specific skill, get the degree, boards, legal certifications, right? And it's very specific. Depending on what you go to school for, people feel like, well, I went to school for this one thing, and this is the one thing that I'm going to do. Is that craft, right? And so a lot of times, whether it just becomes mundane, it becomes very predictable, or you simply outgrow it, it's hard to know what else you can do. And so sometimes people choose their career paths and continue to move forward from a place of necessity rather than possibility. And what we want to get people to is a place of possibility. That all starts with self awareness. So, what does that mean? Well, choices out of necessity are choices made from a place of, I have to do this because it's the only option available to me. Again, when we think about those careers that are very specific, lots of times people are like, well, this is my only option, so I have to choose this. Possibility is, I want to be more exploratory. I believe that there are opportunities and different possibilities out there. And I promise you that regardless of what your current career is, you can make a choice out of possibility. You don't have to keep living out of necessity. And if you feel like you are living in possibility, the question then would be, how can you continue living in that space and prevent yourself from plateauing or becoming in a space where you're coming from necessity? And that starts with just being very honest with yourself and asking yourself, why am I choosing this? And then either write down or verbalize or think about your response and then assess that response and say, is that possibility or necessity? So that's place number one.
I love that. And, because, this podcast is very broad, so we kind of broad strokes. And one of the common things I would hear from my colleagues during residency was like, they were like, "Yeah, I can't stand this. I hate this." But always it was always that proverbial but. And they're like, "I have no options, or I've been in this too long, or I've got
Yep.
500,000 student loan debt, and or my parents would kill me, giving up a career." So
Right.
yeah. The other what's really interesting is so you incorporate this technique called neuro-linguistic programming, and explain
Hmm.
what it is and how these techniques can be used to enhance development, particularly in career situations if people want to change careers, or if they're contemplating getting into a particular career.
Yeah. So one of my favorite topics, and the question that I actually just asked about the possibility or necessity, that is an NLP question. So NLP, neuro linguistic programming in this case, there's also natural language processing, which is a different NLP. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's about understanding communication with self, others, and the world around you, is really the broadest way that I like to define what NLP is. And within that, there are a million techniques, ways of thinking, questions to ask yourself to really get you to get the results that you want. NLP is about understanding all those things so that you can take action and get what you want, whether it's career, family, relationships, personal, fitness, health, whatever. And so one of the first places, again, going back to my example about the possibility or necessity, that comes down to assessing your linguistics, right? Why am I choosing it? Because I have to, or there's possibility, right? So that's the language around defining it. And so what that does is, as a coach, that helps me understand how you view the world and how you view what you believe is available and possible for you, because then that's going to give me insight into what type of action I think you're ready to take and where we need to start in a coaching relationship. Because if you're all gung ho, I can do anything, the world is my oyster, I'm going to work with that person very differently than somebody that is really stuck, feeling like they can't make progress, feeling like they're spinning their reels, they've tried everything, they're not getting results. So that's kind of one example of how that helps me assess how to move forward. And there's a bajillion different specific tools and techniques for people that are more stuck. There are more kind of therapeutic practices, so to speak, that help you overcome self-imposed mental roadblocks, right? Like we always, sure you've heard the term, we're the biggest thing in our own way. And that is 1,000% true. And there are things that can really fast track you to get out of your own way. So there's NLP techniques for that too. But like I said, the goal really is customize each individual person. Where are you trying to go? And how can I and NLP help you get there in the most efficient and quality way?
Yeah, I love that. And what I really love is you talked about self-awareness, and anytime like I'm triggered, or feeling frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
or fearful, I pay attention to the language that I'm using. And so even
Uh-huh.
even outside of a coaching, this is really powerful to be able to change the language of how you talk to yourself. So kind of moving on to this idea, because leadership and management and all of this is great. But now we have AI, and now we have
Mm-hmm.
work from home, and now we have the millennials and Gen Zs. They're like, screw this. I'm not working for any company. I'm gonna create my own company. Or so talk about how all this fits into this changing landscape, AI, generational age differences. How can you hone these skills to get the best result?
Yeah, so it's interesting for a few reasons, because the human brain wants to predict and also wants to create the highest degrees of knowingness and certainty as possible. That's just our nature. And ways of achieving that are generalizing, putting people in buckets, stereotyping. And I don't necessarily mean people are doing it in a bad or a malicious type of way, but that's just our attempt at defining things around us and minimizing certainty, minimizing risk, because those things are scary to us. So I like to think of differences when we talk about generations, right? When we talk about age, even within the same generation, across different careers and industries. I like to just generalize it to people are different and we need to learn how to treat them differently and speak to them as they are rather than saying, well, they must be this way or they must not be that way because of a generation or because of, whatever. And then the AI piece, technology is just, you know, the context through which we are living and experiencing these things. Because technology has always been changing the game, the internet being the greatest one in the recent, century. And AI, as we know how it's evolving today, is a close second to that, or maybe even would, surpass the internet, right? But anyway, so it's really easy to want to just chalk it up to age, generation, whatever. But I think it's important to really come back to how do we understand people that are different than us? And then say, how can we leverage the tools and resources we have around us to achieve that? Whether it is AI, whether it is using questioning techniques like NLP, or whether it's just saying, scratch all that, let me just sit down with you, in person or on Zoom and get to know you. One of the core philosophies of NLP that is taught in the very beginning, at least for me in my school, the first thing that's taught, a couple things. People are doing the best they can with the resources they have available to them in the moment. Sometimes someone's best is really not good at all. And especially if your best is great and they're bringing their best, which is significantly not even comparable to you, that's still the best. And so just assuming positive intent always, and just recognize that people are coming from a different place. And so, yeah, I think AI is scary and a lot of people are straying away from it. And that's a different conversation we could have altogether. But I would just say, look at your specific set of circumstances, what you have, what the other person or people have, and just say, how can I understand them better? And how can I use that new understanding from a place of curiosity to then develop a better relationship with them, to then, develop more preferable work outcomes or work conditions for both of us.
Yeah, very insightful because when it boils down to, you're talking about communication and all these other stuff like there's like tied all these is just basically extraneous, and when you get down to it, it's just relating. So I love how you meet people where they are and assume the positive, assume the best in people. They're not out to get you and it's not about you. Yeah, because I mean, I see AI here. There's like autonomous taxis now, and then now if you have like Elon's coming out with autonomous robo taxis, and what's going to happen to Uber, Lyft drivers, or even truck drivers are losing their jobs, and like you have a lot of like people in the telecommunications now where they can be answered by AI. So really interesting. So kind of round it out. How can what the future of work? What trends do you see shaping the future of work? How should professionals prepare? And what should people listening to this be aware of when they reach out to you and want to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what's remained constant over history and time is always a great place to kind of resort to, right? When you think about like Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and you see these quotes from them and these things that they would say thousands of years ago, and they still ring true today, which is crazy and also shows that we can kind of lean on these philosophies to satisfy, for lack of a better word, our human brain's desire to predict. And so, again, the context is what changes, but it's those foundations and fundamentals that pretty much have stayed the same throughout these thousands of years. So just saying, how can we still kind of keep those things in mind and operate under those principles while just modifying and evolving as the modern day and age and technology continue to do that? So I think it can feel really overwhelming and not knowing where to start, but just keep going. Like what you said, use the word relation. Um, just focusing on relationships, communication, and everything else is just contextual and will continue to change and modify. But what will make all of that change easier is focusing on enhancing the working relationships you have with people. Because like we want to work with people that we like and that we can get along with. And we'd rather work through conflict, concern, and hard times with people that we feel like we can get along with. So I think that is really the basics, and especially people that are in highly technical fields, oftentimes you're not really taught that unless you studied or do this self-awareness, personal development work kind of on your own. One thing that most companies have a huge opportunity to improve upon are those things. So this may sound elementary, but it is in many cases, and it's overlooked. It's a first step that is so often skipped. So I really can't emphasize enough how much easier that makes all of this. So that's what I would say to that, is how it can keep evolving. As far as how people can get in contact with me, I'm on all the main social media platforms. Just my name, Elena Pastore, LinkedIn. Instagram is my business name, which is Elena Torre Coaching. And then I'm on TikTok under my name as well. And then LinkedIn Business as well. So posting lots of content there. And if you are curious to know where can I start with developing some of this knowledge and expertise and questions to ask people I work with, developing this self-awareness and these first steps that I mentioned, I have a couple of little mini masterclass videos that give you a little bit of a deeper introduction to these topics that I discussed today. So I would say I can give you the links to that for the show notes. And that's also a great place to familiarize yourself with my work and also to develop yourself for the workplace.
Yeah, I love that. And so the other thing, really briefly, is I always love to get the guests that have libraries, because I see a really beautiful library in the background. What were your top 3 books that you could recommend to the audience to check out? And I'm always in the marketplace for books and ideas.
Yeah, so I'm more of a podcast person. I'm not going to lie, many of these books have been there for a little bit too long, untouched. But I would say How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. One of the other ones, also a classic, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I almost referenced this actually a few minutes ago. It might be the opening chapter, or pretty early on in the book, they talk about this principle that I mentioned of people are doing the best they can with the resources they have available to them in the moment. Because they talk about, I don't know if you've read it or if you remember this, where they talk about robberies.
It's
Have
the
you read
7 Habits, in the 7 Habits.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in 7 Habits.
So it's been a while since I need to go back and reread it, but go ahead and elaborate on it.
So they talk about the dilemma of, and this is a classic example that is given in a lot of schools of, if your wife has this terminal disease and there's this one pill that can cure it, would you steal or would you commit a crime to save a life? Right. And a lot of people say they would. So it's ethics versus, law
Yeah.
in many cases. And it just comes down to the principle that, a few things. Life is very gray. And also, even when we are doing things that are deemed as bad, objectively, like breaking the law, for example,
Yeah.
we may say, well, that is the best thing to do because of the conditions and the circumstances. So I'm not doing anything wrong, even though I'm breaking the law, because my ethics are my moral compass and may tell me otherwise.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's how 7 Habits, or maybe it's a different book. But I think that's how that opens. But I'm not the greatest person to ask for books, but for podcasts, Diary of a CEO is one of my favorites. And they talk about lots of topics that are really timeless and applicable across industries, across practices. So one thing that I've been doing recently is really leaning into different industries, different subject matters, and kind of seeing how different principles and things can really cross over. I think that's a really great way to expand your mindset and also to just see the world as more whole and less segmented. So that's my recommendation there.
Yeah, I love that. And all those are really excellent books. And so I really enjoyed this conversation. And for the audience, be sure to follow Elena's socials, give her a like and follow, reach out to her for coaching. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having